Hello, welcome to another excelattheoffice.com video. My name's Adrian and this is the third in a series where I take you through my Dunder Mifflin people dashboard, so making a dashboard with, in this case, HR data in Excel. So in the first video I gave a demo and run through of the dashboard and the various supporting pages and intro pages and stuff. In the second video I went through the first two steps where I set out the worksheets for you in my follow along file. Check out my blog at ito.blog/blog or excelattheoffice.com/blog. So I've gone through the worksheets, colours, and I cleaned up the data, including all the getting all the formatting right, and then this yellow area I went through various calculations for you. In this video I'm going to show you how to create the various pivot tables that refer to that data. So here's my ready-made pivot tables. What I'm going to do is create several of them so that you can follow along, and then I'll go through fast on the others. Where the pivot tables are unique and different, so for example some of them are counting two different metrics, I'll show you how to do that, whereas others are counting one metric across different categories. And I'll also show you how to format them so they look nice as well. So let's get to it on my follow along sheet. So you probably got to here last time where I showed you all the data. I've got a pivots page ready to receive the pivot tables. So the first thing we're going to do on my data, I formatted this as a table, so hopefully you've done the same. I'm going to go to my insert, I'm going to pin the ribbon, always show it to save me having to click it each time, and you just choose this pivot table option. Now I've named my table range people data, so it will always refer to that. No matter how many extra records I add on the end of it, it'll automatically pick it up. I recommend doing that as a table, as I mentioned before in the episode 2 of this mini-series, because otherwise Excel struggles to either pick up all your data, you keep having to update the reference range for your pivot table, or if you select all the columns, your pivot table will forever show this field called blanks, and that's because there's blanks after the last row. I don't need to insert it into a new worksheet, so I'm going to just look at the wizard here. So when you've got your table range, I'm going to go to an existing worksheet, and the worksheet I want is in pivots, so I'm going to select my location around about there in my pivots sheet and then click OK. So there's my first pivot table. Now before we do anything with that pivot table, it's good to right click on it and choose some of the pivot table options, so that the first thing we don't want our pivot tables to do is auto fit column widths on update, because that's really annoying. It adjusts all the widths of the cells and such. For empty cells you can either choose blanks, or I like to put zeros in there. Under the totals and filters you can choose your totals for rows and columns. We'll do that on each one depending on whether or not we need it, but generally you won't want it if you're doing a graph, because your graph will pick up all the when you're categorizing things, the graph will display the categories and the total. So then we'll click OK. I'm going to explain a bit about pivot tables before we drag things in. So in the filters, we won't generally be using this, but you can put a field in there where you've got different categories. So if, for example, I want to filter the whole pivot table by male or female, then I'll use the sex as a drop down filter above the pivot table. For the rows and columns, that's the way you slice and dice the table. So for example, I might choose the rows as my ethnicity label, and then columns as, let's just see, some smaller category PDR rating It's only got a few categories. So that's the power of pivot tables. You can slice and dice, and in this case I'm looking at 2 variables. For each of the ethnicities I'm looking at the PDR rating in this case. You can manually change the order in which things go as well by selecting the field on your pivot table and dragging it to the left. So I might want to go in ascending order with these things, so from poor to average, good and excellent. And as I mentioned earlier, you can choose whether or not to include totals by either that quick link there, remove grand total, but I tend to go into the pivot table options, totals and filters, and I want to remove those both unchecked. So your columns, filters and rows are for the various variables and categories. The values is what you want to count. So if you just want to count the items, you can pretty much select anything from, I like to use employee ID because it's unique. If you use the name, any of the fields really, but I'm going to show you if you want to sum total things, you tend to use a numerical field. So I'm going to bring in full-time equivalent in there. I'm going to get rid of PDR rating, which you just double click it here and drag to there, or in the ethnicity one I'm going to remove that as well. I'll show you the other way of just removing it, is just uncheck it from there. And I don't want these drop downs above the table either, so I'm just going to deselect that box. So as a default, it's been very clever. It's given me the sum of the FTE as the values. What I might want to do, I want the count as well, so I'm going to bring the FTE again, drag it, and I'm going to have it above there. And in this situation I'm going to change that, so instead of adding up all these, what it's doing is adding up the FTE columns, so it's counting all the 0.8s, the 1s, the 0.7s and so on, and therefore giving me a total of a very precise FTE there. I just want to count how many rows there are, so i.e. each row is a person, so I want to count each row, and therefore that will give me a head count. So I'm going to change this. In the drop down menu you can change the settings of the value field. So by default, if it's not a numerical value, it will count it for you. So I'm just going to take it off sum, go to count. You can, if I just click OK, so now it's changed it. So I've got 49 people in Dunder Mifflin, of which are FTE of 45.75. And what I can do is, I want to change that. I don't need such a precise decimal point. So I'm going to go to my drop down menus for the value field settings. I'm going to go to my number format, and as a number I'm going to choose the decimal places as just 1 decimal place. Click OK on that, so that's rounded it up for me. Next I'm going to change the name of these fields, because I don't want count of FTE, I just want head count. So you just type over the title and then FTE. So there we go. Next I'm going to make this pivot look nice, so under the design tab I'm going to choose my dark green pivot table shade, and you can choose the whole column to centralize everything if you so wish as well. So this pivot table is going to give me the simple, on the dashboard, these total employee counts when we come to do that. So these text boxes are referencing that pivot table. So what I want to do next, I want to give this pivot table a title so I know what it's referring to. So I might just want to insert a couple of rows here just to give myself space to give titles to the pivot. So this is headcount and FTE. I'm not going to bother changing. Oh, actually, one thing you can do. I don't like this. It used to be Calibri, now it's Aptos Narrow It seems to be pick and mix in Microsoft lately. Select all the cells in that top left between A and 1, and I quite like Arial as a more readable format. Don't need to widen the column widths, but I'm going to make that bold. And what I'm also going to do, I'm going to insert a column to the left, and I'm going to merge these cells. I'm just going to create a space. You can do this more tidily, and I'm going to call this my employee overview section. We can't see that text, so I want it angled upwards. So there's a quick link here for orientation. I want everything rotated up. So there we go. And if I centralize everything, that will work nicely. So this is my employee overview section. I'm going to highlight that in green. So I've got my first pivot table now. So just going back to my pivots that I've got in my ready-made Dunder dashboard, I want the count now, head counts by function, by location, by seniority, and my full or part-time equivalent to show what proportion of my people are full-time and what proportion of part-time. You can choose whether to do it FTE if you prefer, but I prefer, when you're talking about people, it's best to just count the people. Every individual matters, as it were. And this is why it's important to get your first pivot table right. So that pivot table, behind it, it's captured all that data. So anytime you double click on a number within a pivot table, it will bring up the data that it's referring to. Now, because it's, I'm just going to delete that. Because it's storing all that data in the background, it takes up, it kind of duplicates in a way the memory that your Excel file takes up. So to minimize memory, and also for when you've added new data, so when you add new data to your table, it automatically picks up there. You can then right click on it and refresh. And I didn't add anything, but if I added one, it will give me a 50 headcount. And when you refresh the one, it will refresh them all. Whereas if you do each pivot table starting from scratch, you'll have to do that on each one. So this is kind of enables you to do one-click updating. Okay, so I'm going to select my pivot table. I'm going to Control-C to copy. Give some space between because you don't want things encroaching or overlapping in any way. And Control-V. This one, I don't need the FTE total, so I'm just going to double click and drag that away. I'm only interested in the head count, but this time I want the head count by function. So I've used lookups in my data to aggregate the function. I showed you in the last video how you can use lookups. So for example, where I've got specific data, so in column H2 I've got departments, but there's loads of departments, and that will be quite detailed in terms of a table. I want to summarize that in terms of broad function, and I've given them 4 categories, and then use the lookup formula to aggregate those and categorize those, which is the main purpose of lookups really, or one of the key purposes of lookups. So this time I want it by broad function, so that's towards the end. Find your field, there it is. It's helpful if you give them meaningful names, and I'm going to put that as, not in columns, I'm going to put that in rows. And you see it's not adjusting the width of my cells like that. It's keeping everything neat and tidy and uniform, because the first one I made sure that it didn't adjust the cell width, and it's not giving me totals under here for all my functions, because when I want to come and do the chart, I want it to just show those 4 bars, not those 4 bars plus a really big 5th bar that gives the total, which is completely annoying and unnecessary. So I'm going to do the location and seniority quickly. See if you can follow along by doing as I've just done there, copying either the first one now or this second one. I'm going to choose the second one. Copying, pasting, each, and then I'm going to choose the other fields. So welcome back, hopefully you managed that. So I've got this one, I've chosen the office location, and this one I've counted the headcount by seniority, which was based on another lookup table, so aggregating all the job roles that exist in the organisation of this fictional paper company and categorising them into junior, specialist, management or exec roles, which is helpful to then see where your, say for example, your salary gaps are at different parts of the organisation, or how many different people you've got, without going too far into the weeds. So as I showed you earlier, you can drag and drop these. So if I want to go from junior to most senior, I'm going to select the field and just move it up or down the list, and annoyingly I have to do all three. Then I'm going to give each of these a title, so I'm just going to do that quickly to save this video being too long. Now, a good thing to do is save this as you go, because Excel can be temperamental. So I'm going to save that now. Next time, the next one I want to do is the full or part-time for a pie chart. So this one, I'm again just going to copy this, paste here, and instead of seniority, I just want full or part-time. If I click there, it's automatically put it in the rows for me, which is helpful. I just pressed escape to get rid of those marching ants, and headcount by full part-time. Okay, so comparing my pivots to my ready-made one, I've got the first row of pivots. I might want to just zoom out a little bit just to kind of make sure I can see everything on the one page. Again, like I say, it hasn't got to be exact and neat. One of the things we'll come on to later, it's good to leave enough space between the pivots. So for example, if you suddenly get extra categories of things or something goes wrong, your pivots won't update because it will try and encroach on some other part of your thing. So it's good to leave a bit of padding between. And as I mentioned, just going through my notes here, if you're showing blanks, that means the pivot table's been, you're probably referencing entire columns of data like that rather than the table source. You can choose the order by sorting A to Z if you don't want to do it manually, so you can do A to Z sorts, Z to A, or some more sort options. I'll do a separate video on the detail of that. I'm doing things in rows because pivots for the top bar, because pivots need to be sideways for stacked bars. So like this, if I want a stacked bar chart for my dashboard, that needs to be sideways like these, but it's long ways for like this for simple side bar charts coming out from the side. I've said about the copy and paste new pivots. We're going to name each pivot table in a minute, and I've explained why that's important to copy and paste. So let's get on to the next set of pivots, which is all about the salary. So we're going to use a different value field for this. We're going to focus on the salary values. So we're going to aggregate it. That's not actually £2,700. That is 2,000 thousands. So I've aggregated that into thousands. So let's do that now. So again, I'm going to do two fields. I'll just copy this one. It doesn't necessarily need to be this one because we're going to adjust it. Control C, Control V to copy, then paste. If this one, I've not done it far down enough, so I'm just going to insert a row there. And now this is salary and bonus overall. I'm going to make that bold. So in my pivot table fields, if you're not seeing this on the right, obviously you can go to right click and see the field list I've just hidden it, hide or show the field list. So I'm going to remove the headcount and remove FTE total. And this time I'm going to choose annual salary as one field, last year bonus as another field. I'm going to call this one salary, this one bonus, if I can type. So these salary numbers, I want them as pounds, and I don't want to show all the zeros. All the zeros are unnecessary because in my dashboard, as per the completed report, I just want to show the salary costs in thousands to the nearest thousand, rather than the long numbers which would take up space on the chart and not display properly. So in here I'm going to right click, I'm going to go to my value field settings, which you can access some of the shortcuts here for the values field settings under these two options, but I like to go to the pop-up menu straight away. So it is creating a sum, it's counting up all the money, not counting how many occasions where money is in a field, i.e. 49 as per my 49 head count. So that's good, but I want to give it a specific number format, and the number format I want to give is a custom one. The one I want, I've got it copied, but I'll just paste it here, is this. So it's the pound sign, it gives a number, comma, number 0, and then a semicolon, and then the minus version of that. So it's rounding to the nearest thousand basically. So I've zoomed in on that and you can see, and copy that for yourself just to type it out, and click OK, and click OK again. So now that's corrected that for me. I'm going to do the same with the bonus. So that's my salary and bonus pivot sorted. Next pivot to do is the salary and bonus costs by department. So I need a bit of space for that, and then I'm going to do average salary in a moment. So let's copy and paste the first one and do that by department. So I'm going to copy it, Control C to copy, Control V, salary and bonus by department. It's good to kind of name the pivots just for your reference. In a while I'll show you, you're going to name them for Excel's reference, but we'll do that towards the end. So I don't want just the total. In this case I want to drag in the department. So now I've got my salary and bonus listed, but then my departments listed, in this case in alphabetical order, and that's fine. Next, and this time I'm going to just copy the title in with it as well, save me formatting a title. I'm going to copy and paste that one, and this time I'm going to do average salary by demographic. So in terms of the fields, I only need the one field, and I'm going to remove salary and bonus, and I'm going to choose my total remuneration, which is total salary, adding the two together, because it would be not the row labels, I want it as the values, because we want to capture the whole picture together. So that, again, that's given me the sum. First of all, I need to format that data to the number so that it gives me accounting. I don't want 2 decimal places. The symbol's right, so I don't need a special format because I do want to count every pound in salary. It's just showing me hashtags there because it's not visible in that cell, the whole number. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make that an average. So in this case I'm going to go to the value field settings again. So to get the average, instead of going to the total sum there, I'm going to show that as an average of the total salary. So dividing the total by 49. If I just make this column wider, we'll see. So on average, each person in Dunder Mifflin is earning 62,500 in the last year, including bonuses, which isn't too bad. Now what we can do is break that down between the the sexes, so female and male. I'm going to bring in my category, so sex, drag that into the rows. I'll minimize this column and make that wider. So my salary is 76,000 female, 56,000 male. And if you watch the TV program and look at the data, you'll see that that's largely because the female is skewed by the executive level of the organization, which is why it's helpful to be able to have these filters and later slicers I'll show you in terms of being able to categorize at each layer. And this is by sex, and another important one to do is by ethnicity. So I'm going to call this ethnicity. I'm going to widen my salary so we can actually see the salaries, and instead of sex, I'm going to bring in, just clicking it, ethnicity. Now what I'm going to do is just give this a label as well. I'm going to copy this set of merged cells, save me having to do it all again, and Control V to paste, and that fits okay. And this is all about salary info for the area of my dashboard. So this is helpful just to kind of be able to switch between my dashboard and the pivots as I'm creating it, to see sequentially where I'm using them and just organizing them nicely together. My next set of info will be the person demographics, so sex, ethnic group and age I'm going for, and that will feature as these bars here on my diversity profile section of the report. You may choose to ready your dashboard space as you're doing the pivots, but that's not entirely necessary. I'll show you in the next video how to create all the nice charts and things, but we know they're going to be stacked bar charts, and each chart is just one bar showing the categories. So as I mentioned before, to get stacked bar charts we need to do things across ways. If I show you here, the categories are now in the columns, female, male for example, rather than as rows along down here. So what I'm going to do, go back to our pivots, and instead of copying a salary one, because I can't be bothered to adjust all the value settings, I'm going to copy one that's close enough with the title as well. So let's go for this one, and I'm going to paste it here. So headcount by, I think it was sex first, and I'm not going to have the office location. I'm going to choose sex, and I'm going to drag it to the columns. So there we go, I've got my female and male headcount. Then ethnic group and age. So I'm going to do those if you want to follow along, but I'm just going to do them quickly now. So there we go, there's my categories. Thankfully my age categories are in order from youngest to oldest, and I'm just going to add in here just a section, highlight those, merge and center. I'll show you, orient the text up again, and if I just call this demography, make it a bit larger, bold, fill it in green, and centralize. So next set of pivots, so we've got quite a few here, is my sickness rates. So this is quite interesting. I'll take you through each of these because there's some unique calculations going on here. So first of all, my average sickness rate. So I'm going to choose one of these pivots up here. I'm going to paste it down here as a start, give it a new title, and remove the categories I don't want. So I've calculated a personal sickness rate for each individual, as I showed you in my last video. So now I want to have that as the values and get rid of the head count. So drag it in there, take the other one out. I don't want the sum of my sickness rate, so I'm going to go here and choose my value field settings again. So I don't want it as the sum, I want it as the average. And the number format, I want this as a percentage. And I don't need loads of decimal places, let's just go for 1 decimal place. Click OK. So my average sickness rate across everyone is 2.6%, which isn't too bad. Oh, I made a typo there. That's pretty good in terms of industry standard sickness. What I'm also going to do is bring over the Bradford factor rating categories. So that's just a similar category item. So I'm going to again bring this one over. Copy that rather than create new. I'm going to just paste an existing, but I'm just going to adjust it so it's got all my formatting. It's not going to increase my file size by duplicating all the data. I've got a head count, but this time I'm going to do by Bradford factor rating. So Bradford factor is another way of kind of estimating sickness. Again, it's done high, low, medium. I want medium, high, medium, low, and then nil to represent on the chart in order. And then finally, what I want to do is do a top 5 table of the top 5 sickness rates, or in top 5 in terms of Bradford factor score, which will feature in my, all this sickness stuff is in this area of my dashboard. So it's only 3 charts, but it's good to, as I'm doing here, organize all your pivots according to what section of the dashboard it goes in, because it's just easier to keep track of. But I want those top 5 shown as little infographic charts. So the way to bring that pivot table in is I'm just going to copy this, paste it here. Oh, I need to change the title of that, sickness, Bradford factor score rating, and this is top 5 Bradford factor scores. And this is an important one where you need to leave space between, because what I'm going to do on this one, I'm going to take out the Bradford factor rating, and I'm going to have my Bradford factor actual score here, not the head count, and I'm going to break that down by individual. So I've concatenated the names together, if I can find it in my formulas. Oh, full name, here we are. So I want the rows as the full name. So there's lots of people, it's 49 different people basically, so I don't want all those people showing. I want to just show the top 5 in this case. So you go to the value filters, I'm going to choose under top 10, bring it down to 5 items by the sum of the Bradford factor, click OK. So that's my top 5. If it so happens that someone also has, several people have 1, 2, 5, they would be joint top 5, and therefore your pivot table would extend to however many people are also 5th. So that's when you're doing individuals like that, that's what she said, that's when it's useful to make sure you add padding between your pivot tables. In this case it is just the top 5, there's no equal 5th top spot. However, it's not in order from highest to lowest, so again I need to go to my sort options here. So this is where we'll choose more sort options, and I'm going to go for descending, as in largest to smallest, by sum of Bradford factor rather than full name, and click OK. So now that's put my highest at the top, lowest at the bottom. So next I'm just going to categorize this section of pivots. Control C my demography, Control V there, and this one's actually sickness. So these are all my sickness pivot tables. I'm going to give a bit of extra padding by inserting another row here, just in case, you never know. So, next section of pivot tables. So we've only got 3 more to go, so we're on the home straight now, is my service and birthdays section. Obviously the birthday by month is very important for the planning party committee, but these are just service profiles, are just simple counts of the service profile category, so you can go ahead and create that. And also the top 5, I'll show you how actually to do these next 2. So I'm going to create the birthday months, because that's very important for the planning party committee, or party planning committee I should say. I'm going to take off, I've copied and pasted the service category one which I created before, and now I'm going to choose birthday month in terms of my row, and thankfully Excel has recognized that as a date order. I'm just going to extend this. A quick way to extend your merged and centered items is just select a few extra cells, uncheck merge and center, and then check it again, and it merges it with that formatting. So I've got my birthday month, and then lastly I want to do the top 5 based on longest service. So I'm going to choose an existing top 5, just to make it a bit easier. Change the title, and in this instance, instead of my sum of Bradford factor, I'm going to choose my service length calculation that I showed you how to do on the prior video. And then I'm going to do similar again, where I'm going to go to sort option, sorry, not sort. I'm going to do my value filters, top 10. I don't want top 10, I want top 5. It's the sum of service length, that's okay. And then I'm going to sort, more sort options, descending by service length values. Click OK. So Todd Packer, longest service, followed closely by Stanley, who's soon to retire apparently, and Michael Scott, who's already left for pastures new. And David Brent's up there as well. Good on him. 24 years. He'll get a distinctive paperweight award when he reaches 25, no doubt. Now, let's go to the CPD and performance. So these are just, again, count of head counts by PDR rating. Yes, no, in terms of whether or not they've had a CPD pie chart. And then what I'm going to do is, so I'm going to create those 2 quickly. You can do as I've shown you before, using the selected fields, and then we'll regroup when it comes to the top 5 sales reps. Okay, so I've added in my CPD/PDR section. So performance, this is all about performance and development. PDR, performance development review, or your organization might call it an annual review or something, where basically the blood, sweat and tears you give for your employer is rated on a scale from poor to average, good or excellent, or something similar. Whether or not your CPD is up to date, I think that's quite important. And all this will go on the dashboard and the, if I show you the completed one, CPD and performance section. So those are those 2, CPD up to date, yes or no, and then top 5 sales reps. And the performance measure we're going to use based on this is the bonus as a % of salary. So the more bonus they've got, that suggests they've been doing more sales because it's commission based. So if I go back to my data, I'm going to just take an existing top 5 to start with again. I'm going to put this here. So in this instance, I want it just to be based on the sales reps. So I'm going to just select the width of the pivot table, but outside it, right click and insert, and shift cells down, and that will give me space to nicely put in the broad function as a filter. So put that in the filters area, and I'm just going to select the one item, sales. So now my people are filtered to sales. I haven't got sales yet, I've still got a headcount. So I want the bonus as a percent of salary. So that's all my salespeople with their bonus as a percent of salary. I need to, first of all, give my value filters so that it's the top 5 again. I'm going to sort from largest to smallest, descending by sum of bonus as percent of salary, and obviously I need to format the values as a percentage. So go to my value field settings, under the number format, percentage, and I don't need any decimal places, it need not be that precise. Click OK, OK that, and that pivot table's done. Now we're on the home straight because we just have one last row of pivots to do, and that is complaints. And actually I think you can probably do these ones yourself by the top 5 complaints in a similar way. In this instance, if I show the field list, we're using the number of complaints as the value, sum of complaints, and we're doing the same sum of complaints, but this time we're just doing it categorized by function. So go ahead and do that and we'll check back. So now I've created those extra pivots, so complaints, top 5 complaints ordered by the volume of complaints, and complaints by function, because those are going to go in my dashboard under a complaints section here. So that's what those pivots are going to feed these 2 charts. So if I just go back to my steps, creating the pivot tables, thanks for bearing with me. So we've created all the pivot tables, we're ready to create the charts on the dashboard space now, but for one minor activity, which is giving each pivot table a clear name. We've done the title, but we need to give them a clear name so that when you come to create charts, you're not creating them from confusingly pivot table 1, pivot table 2, pivot table 3, and so on. And the way to do that, you simply select the pivot table, and up the top here on pivot table analyze ribbon, you choose pivot table name here, and we're going to call this a more meaningful name. So we'll call this headcount and FTE. And it also comes useful when you're doing the slices as well, and you say, well, what do you want this to be a slicer based on, and you want to select the various pivot tables. This one, because we've already got pivot table analyze selected, we can see that's pivot table 2. We want that by headcount by function. Press enter to make it happen. I mean, another way you can go to pivot table options, but I think it's easier from here. Pivot table 3, headcount by location, so that you're giving each pivot table its unique name, so that yeah, it's just easier when you're creating charts and slicers later on. So there we go, there's all the steps of pivot tables. I'll end this video here. So this is video 3 in my how to create this fantastic dashboard series. In the next video I will show you how to create the charts based on those pivots, which are these, and create the space nicely for your dashboard, and then place your charts on that space so it looks all snazzy and colourful like this, and very engaging, so the people you actually send reports to actually read the darn things, which wouldn't that be a turn up for the books. So I hope you found that helpful. Let me know in the comments what you found most useful. Obviously I'm going through my follow along that you can download the data set for that kind of interactive learning with real data, or in this case based on a fictional company, to kind of help cement the learning as you go. But obviously these concepts you can use for whatever data set you have, whether that's even, it might not even be HR data, but you might have sales data or something else. You can use these concepts similarly by creating those pivots and creating your own charts later on. So join me next time in video 4, where I'll take you through the fancy and artistic bit and the chart creation. Until then, you might want to look at my video on next level charts in Excel, and take care.